welcome back to Get to the Plot Film Club, the official podcast. Thank you so much for joining me this week. I hope you're having a lovely day wherever you are, and I hope you're enjoying the weather. It's actually been a lot better, I think, than last week. I don't think it's been 30 degrees as much as it was before, and I'm also filming this early in the morning, so I'm actually an appropriate temperature for once, so I shouldn't look like I've just had a shower by the end of the episode. But yeah, I'm very excited. It's Hot Fuzz week. I'm so happy. When I saw it on ITVX, I genuinely was like, I have to make this the pick of the week, because it's just one of those films that I recommend it to so many people, and they're like, oh yeah, maybe I'll get round to it. But no, it's just one of those films I feel like everyone just needs to tick off, whether you love it or you hate it, but most people do love it because it's honest. I just think it's so fantastic. It's so clever. I think for me, I love a full circle moment within a film. This movie has so many of those moments. It's actually just sensational how many times they refer back to the beginning, and it's one of those things. I love it when films can hold something up and go, it was right in front of your face and you missed it. Like, yeah, it makes me feel stupid, but then I'm like, mind's blown, you know? Anyway, so yeah, I'm going to tell you a few fun things about the filming of Hot Fuzz, and also just some of the things that impacted the way that it turned out in the end. There's so many interesting things about this movie. I promise you, it'll become one of those movies like Lord of the Rings. You know when you're watching it and then there's a moment and then you're like, pause, I just need to tell everyone this really fun fact I know about this movie, and then you carry on watching, but you end up pausing it like at least 15 times during the watch. So enjoy that. You're going to have so much new knowledge. And also, when we get onto the reviews, there was definitely more people that agree with me that it is a blooming good movie, but there are a few people that actually kind of said, I don't like these aspects, which I want to talk about. I'm really interested to know why some people didn't get on with some certain things, and yeah, I'm so excited, so let's get on with it. So this movie was written by Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg. They are just such a crazy good duo. I do think, though, I was talking to my friend about this the other day, I saw The Running Man, which came out this year, the one with Glenn Powell in it, and Edgar Wright directed that movie. He also wrote it. We were both saying, we just think that his movies just don't hit since they stopped writing together. I don't know, like, I did like The Running Man. I thought it was a really good movie, but it dragged. There was a point where it kind of just goes off, and it doesn't feel like it's really going anywhere from that. If anyone's seen it, I'm not going to spoil it, but there's a moment when Glenn Powell is in a car with a woman. That's all you're going to get. But I just personally think from that point onwards, it doesn't go, well, it does go places, but it takes ages to get to the point. But I think that Simon Pegg, when he's writing with Edgar Wright, you can tell that they just have such a way of writing together. I haven't seen Last Night in Soho, so I can't really judge what he was like in regards to doing that movie, but I think the Cornetto trilogy just as a whole is just so witty, and I think it's just because those two just freaking work together so well. So with this movie, they both took to the streets went to, police. They spoke to British police, basically, the coppers, and the liaison officer told the police officers that they were going to talk to that they were journalists. So then none of the police officers went and actually spoke to them, because they were like, oh, they're going to write an article basically slandering the police. So no one spoke to them. Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright basically offered to take them to the pub, and no one turned up because they didn't want to talk to who they thought was the press. But when they did finally get to talk to some other police officers, and he said in an interview that liaison officer has never been forgiven. But when they finally did get to speak to some police officers, one of them said, I like to think my office is out on the streets, which they used that line in the movie. So props to you if you were the police officer that gave them that line. But also Sandford as well. So it's a fictional town. They filmed it in Wells, Somerset, which is where Edgar Wright grew up. And Sandford is actually the name of a fictional village that police officers refer to, or they go to, when they're doing like practice drills and emergency drills for when you're training. So they use Sandford as the village in the film. I just think that's so clever. It's just, again, like, even when it comes to researching the movie, there are still kind of full circle ideas that they've used within filming and how they've referred back to police officers in real life. And they said that one of the main things about the police is that they said that 50% of the job is paperwork, and they never seem to include that in movies. You know, they always just show the best bits. Obviously that's one of the main plot lines that they use for Danny, the way that he watches movies thinking it's going to be like the films when he's a police officer, but it's nothing like the movie until obviously the end. But they wanted to include the fact that he had paperwork to do, and I just think that's so funny. Again, like, it's core British humour, and it's the fact that they were like, they compared it to the movies that he was watching in the film, and about, well, they'd have to deal with a considerable amount of paperwork. Also, they wanted to kind of parody more the idea that all sort of, you know, action movies are 2 words and seem to always have the same amount of letters in each word. So, for example, like Lethal Weapon. So they wanted to call it Hot Fuzz because, again, like, bad boys, you know, like, they all just had 2 words, but then Edgar Wright was debating about the idea of calling it hot with 2 T's, like hot, H-O-T-T, fuzz, so that they had the same amount of letters in both words. And Simon Pegg basically just went, let's not do that, because every interview is going to be me having to explain why there's 2 T's in hot, and I can't be bothered for that. So one of the main things as well when they were writing the script was that they were going to include a love interest for Nicholas, which I think a lot of people actually know about this movie, but you might be new to this fact, so listen up. So yeah, they originally had a love interest called Victoria, and she was going to be in Sanford, and I think she was going to be a police officer, but then I think they just decided that there was no point because they wanted to focus more on the friendship between Danny and Nicholas, but they gave a lot of Victoria's lines to Danny and didn't do anything about it. So, for example, the scene where he says about the monkey where he's like, I want it for you, that was meant to be a line directed at Victoria. Also the bit about where Danny's saying, and I learned something else and all. Yeah, you don't know how to switch off. Again, Victoria. That one doesn't stand out as much in a sense of it was meant to be for the love interest. But I think the only one that I kind of picked up on was at the end where Nicholas says, I feel like I should say something. And Danny just goes, you don't have to say anything at all. And like, for me, in my head, I'm like, that's where they kiss. Often during filming, lots of the tourists that were in that town thought that Nick Frost and Simon Pegg were actual police officers. And instead of just saying, oh no, we're filming a movie, they actually went along with it and tried to help people with like directions and stuff. And they claimed it made them feel more powerful and helped with the role. So like I said, it's the actual village where Edgar Wright grew up, and also the Summerfield shopping supermarket was where Edgar Wright used to work when he was a kid. He used to stack shelves there. And he said that he did almost call Simon Skinner by his actual manager's name, which was Stockwell, but then he thought it was a bit too on the nose to call him Stockwell. And in one scene in the supermarket, you can actually see Edgar Wright stacking shelves. It's a very much blink and you miss it cameo, but he is just in the background stacking shelves, which is so iconic. This movie had a lot of cameos. A lot of them actually were uncredited in the movie, funnily enough. For example, Peter Jackson, who plays the Santa that stabs Nicholas in the hand. Peter Jackson is the director of Lord of the Rings, but again, he's just a sort of there for 2 seconds and he's gone. Kate Blanchett was in it. You might not have noticed, but she was actually playing Nicholas Angel's ex-girlfriend in the hazmat suit, so you don't even see her face. And again, I don't think she's credited in the movie. But also, the only other person that I saw that wasn't was Steve Coogan, and he's quite a prevalent part in it. Like, yeah, don't get me wrong, again, he's only in one scene, but he's after Martin Freeman and before Bill Nighy, but he's uncredited, which really did surprise me. And also Jim Broadbent, who was in the movie, he actually asked Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright if he could be in the movie because of how much he loved Shaun of the Dead. So they gave him the part of sort of the unassuming police sergeant, and he was really chuffed with being in it. His wife's name, his dead wife's name in the film was meant to be Iris, but he'd actually just released a movie called Iris, and he thought that everyone would assume it was meant to be linked, so they changed it to Irene instead. And also, just for anyone who doesn't know, obviously, about the fact it's called the Cornetto trilogy, which is a combination of Shaun of the Dead, then Hot Fuzz, and then A World's End. So the reason it's a Cornetto trilogy is because in Shaun of the Dead, one of Edgar Wright's hangover cures was a cornetto. That's why Nick Frost in Shaun of the Dead asked for a cornetto. Now, obviously, they go for the strawberry flavour because it's meant to represent blood. In Hot Fuzz, they go for the vanilla flavour because it's blue, like the police. And in A World's End, they go for the green flavour, which is peppermint. Apparently, that's meant to represent like science fiction and extraterrestrial life. Don't really know. Well, I guess green does. But when I saw peppermint, I was like, oh, okay. Aliens? Timothy Dalton, who played Simon Skinner in the movie, he was asked to be in the movie. Edgar Wright kind of knew that he would be the best person to play that character, and as soon as they did the first read through, they knew that he was just the perfect cast for it. And also, it was Timothy Dalton's idea to have the mustache just to make him a little bit more sleazy. But also, when they were filming the scene where Nicholas Angel and Simon Skinner are in the office and they're talking, they filmed all of Simon Skinner's shots first on one day, and then the next day they turned to film the angle, which is where Nicholas Angel is. Apparently, Timothy Dalton actually came in again, got into costume and sat in the other chair, even though he wasn't being filmed that day. But it just showed them like how incredibly professional he is. It's always nice when you know that the craft of being an actor is still the more important thing than it is just to be in the movies. This was a really interesting thing that I found out about kind of the worlds, like when movies kind of connect, and this isn't actually really to do with just the Cornetto trilogy, it's actually to do with 28 Days Later. Basically, in Shaun of the Dead, they included the idea that their zombies came from rage-infected monkeys, which is a reference to 28 Days Later. However, when they made 28 Weeks Later, they say that the cottage at the start of the movie is in Sanford, which is so bizarre. I don't like the fact that they've literally just taken little references from each other. I don't know, that's just so funny. I kind of like that. It creates kind of like a bigger cinematic universe within all movies, and I think people should do that more. I think directors should do that more, just to like poke fun at each other. I think that would be great. And one thing that you may have probably already caught during this movie is that the fact that they never say greater good once. They always have to say it twice. So there's always someone to repeat it, even before the end when Nicholas Angel will say it and then everyone else goes the greater good. Even at the beginning of the movie when Nicholas Angel says it and then it's repeated by Inspector Butterman afterwards. It's just little things like that. It's just so clever, and this is why I just love Edgar Wright as a director. He probably is actually my favourite director until I can think of another one that I like. So on to your fantastic reviews. I have to kind of be a bit quick with this episode. I'm actually off to a tap class after this, so I only have like 20 minutes to film it and then I need to go. So yeah, really loved all your reviews. I especially just loved reading just the ones that were like 5 out of 5, loved this movie, would recommend. They're my favourite reviews to read because it makes me feel like I've picked a good choice. But I've only included like small bits of people's reviews this time because I actually wanted to include everyone. I think everyone wrote such fantastic stuff, especially Ella. She gives like full bullet point reasons as to why she loves and or didn't like it, and you need to have a little read if you haven't already because it is just really good. But I'll get onto that one in a minute. I'm going to start off with Charlie. Charlie gave it 5 out of 5, and Charlie said, "One of my favourite movies that my dad forced me to watch. It was the only one where I was able to guess the twist before him. Also, I do love a good bit of foreshadowing. Definitely 5 out of 5. Yeah, like, it's when people come from like a nostalgic perspective of a lot of movies, they're always the ones that make me so happy, and they're usually the people that will give it like 5 out of 5 because they remember watching it with their family. But yeah, like you said as well, the foreshadowing is so freaking good. But I think I don't want to talk about other things before then I get to it in other people's reviews. So, Izzy gave it 5 out of 5. It is now one of my most favourite films. I was laughing, then almost crying when I thought Danny betrayed Nick. Then when Danny almost died, I had my heart racing. I loved how funny Nick's reaction was when it all was revealed, and I thought the full plot was so good. Definitely will rewatch. And I can't believe I haven't watched it sooner. I have nothing negative to say. I think it hits the mark perfectly. I think you've depicted perfectly my emotional journey that I had with the movie when I first watched it. It's just so, like, actually unbelievably good, the way that everything just works out. And then, like you said, the whole sort of, like, Danny betraying Nick, you actually kind of are like, when you're watching it. To be fair, I didn't guess the ending at all. But I was shook when I saw, Jim Broadbent in it. But then when it got to Danny, I was like, oh, wait, hang on. That's crazy. I think, to be fair, though, I think what I do really like about this movie is that it's not trying to plot twist you like crazy. If anything, because Simon Skinner's character is literally just like this, the whole movie being like, oh, it might be me, it probably is me. And then I think it's then when it is actually him, you're like, brilliant. Because you think, obviously, they're meant to be the red herring, and yet it's actually everyone. That's the one thing I love about this movie, is that I love it when it does kind of feel obvious, but then you're like, oh no, it can't be. And then it is. And then I think that's a better plot twist as to it being someone you completely did not guess. Ella gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and also there's 2 Ellas. The other Ella I was referring to gives it 3.5, but we'll get to that. So, Ella gives it 4 out of 5 and says, my only real issue was the editing. The quick cuts and fast-paced montages, mainly at the beginning, really weren't for me, and it took me a while to get into it. But once the murder mystery kicked off, I was completely hooked and had such a fun time with it. Overall, it was a really entertaining watch. I found this really interesting, the fact that you didn't feel like the way that it was edited was for you. I actually was really intrigued by that, because I think that is really like Edgar Wright's style. He loves doing the fast pace, zoom ins, next scene, like that's very him. So the fact that you weren't really into it really does intrigue me. I'd love to know if you have seen the other Cornetto trilogy movies, because obviously that's kind of what he does throughout all of them. I think personally, actually, I think he does it the best in World's End, because he does it a lot with the pints in the film. Like, it's quite repetitive, but I think that he does it the best in that, because again, when you keep seeing the same thing, you don't always have to like panic that you're missing something, which is quite good. But yeah, let me know, Ella. I'd love to know if you've seen the others and what you think of it in the other ones if you have. Lovely. So then the other Ella that I'm about to refer to, that I was saying you must read her review, it's fantastic. I'm only going to read some of the things she didn't like, because I want to explore why some people didn't get on with it or didn't like certain aspects. So Ella said, the last 30 minutes or so were really entertaining and chaotic, which redeemed it, but I did unfortunately feel like it dragged in parts. Despite enjoying it, I felt myself wanting it to be a little bit more fast-paced in certain scenes. I'm also trying really hard not to compare it to Shaun of the Dead, and as it's a separate film, but I do prefer the script writing jokes in that film. The setup and payoffs in it are so much more satisfying to me than the ones in Hot Fuzz. Again, I find that so interesting. I personally feel like the Hot Fuzz payoff is so much more satisfying, whereas I guess with Shaun of the Dead, it doesn't end kind of like the full circle that Hot Fuzz does. It is quite like, obviously it's very tongue-in-cheek, very comedy-based ending, but that's so interesting. And I get what you mean. The last 30 minutes is just like bam, 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 which is great. But I get what you mean. I think personally there's one scene that does. Actually, it's really hard because I don't think any of them drag. This is so bad because I'm so biased to this movie because I love it so much. I guess maybe the flow of it into the beginning is a little bit slow, like into the village, because there are a few scenes obviously where they're waiting in the car and things like that. They go to the supermarket. It is very sort of building up the tension, I guess, building up the context of the village, so it does take a little while to get into. However, obviously, like you said, by the end, it's just such a good time. But I think, yeah, comparing it's difficult, like you said, because they're different movies. They're not obviously sequels of each other, but it's all Edgar Wright, you know, he does them all very similarly. But I get what you mean, though. The jokes in Shaun of the Dead are are really funny. Like, get fucked, Four Eyes. That is one of my favourite lines, and I'd love to quote it more often, but I don't think I'd have many friends afterwards, or at least any friends with glasses. Kat gave it 5 out of 5, and Kat said, I know on a rewatch it does seem kind of obvious who the killers are, but I remember first watching it, I had convinced myself they were all red herrings, and I was telling my friend, I bet it's the living statue, because I expected such a wild plot twist. That's so valid. Yeah. To be fair, the plot twist for me, when you see the living statue in the ground, dead, the fact he's still frozen is so funny. I think also when you see the youth from earlier that was caught stealing down there as well, that bit actually was probably the most shocking for me, the fact that they were all dead. And also the caravans. Like, genius, loved it. Anyway, Magda gave it 3 out of 5. Why? And said, I loved the humour and I liked the absurdity of the motive. I found it quite refreshing and fun that the crimes weren't really connected, but also, even though the dialogue was well written, I noticed that the people of Sanford felt a little bit like one person. They didn't have distinct personalities, they spoke in a similar way. That was something I found quite annoying. Overall, I enjoyed it. Nothing really deep, but fun. I mean, yeah, it's not really that deep, but fun. The fact that they're like one person, I kind of get what you mean, actually. They are kind of all very similar. I find that all the women are very similar. I think Simon Skinner just liked being a murderer, to be fair. He wasn't all about the town, he just liked killing people. But with Jim Broadbent's character, he's quite similar to the guy in the pub, I think. But I just love Jim Broadbent so much. I'm just going to go on a little rant for a quick second. I don't think that Jim Broadbent has ever been in a bad movie, or at least I don't think a bad movie has ever had Jim Broadbent in it, because I think he just carries movies. Like The Borrowers, what a movie. Paddington, and obviously Paddington 2, he's in that. Robots, you know what I mean? Like, you could actually go through this man's whole film list of everything he's been in, and I genuinely don't think there's a bad movie there. He was Harold Fry, for God's sake. I haven't even seen that movie, and I know for a fact it's great because Harold Fry is just so sad. Get on that. I think, let's find out together. I'll do some research and I'll let you all know if Jim Broadbent has ever been in a bad movie. Bridget Jones, for goodness sake. Anyway, sorry. Gonna move on. And finally, Beth's my sister's name, so you've got a pretty cool name, Beth. Beth gave it 5 stars, and Beth said, this is one of my favourite films ever, so I immediately jumped to rewatch it as soon as I saw it. It was the film of the week. Literally everything about this film is perfect. I'm obsessed with the way a lot of the scenes were filmed and transitions between scenes. Also, I just love how every small piece of info that you think is just a passing comment becomes relevant at some point. It's just so well written. Yeah, I think that's why the script carries this movie hands down. And then obviously by the fact that Edgar Wright is so clever with the way he films it and the way he's edited the movie, it just then all holds up so perfectly together. The script is just so good. I just feel like there aren't as many films that have come out recently where the script is just the perfect baseline. I think a good example though of a film that's come out recently that has a great script, I think, is Obsession. I think that's why it's done so well, because without like a good plot and some cracking writing, you're not going to get anything out of it. So exactly. Thank you very much all for joining me on the Hot Fuzz appreciation episode. This has been so fun to film because I just love talking about it, and it's just also so interesting, like the different things that they put towards this movie. But thank you all so much for listening. Thank you all again. I never say thank you actually to the people that leave the reviews. Thank you, for everyone that's left a review so far. Thank you so much, because I so enjoy reading them. If you guys also want to discuss on the Substack, you are absolutely more than welcome to. If you want to have a conversation, if you want to challenge someone's ideas, if you want to ask more about why they didn't like a certain aspect, then do it. I want to hear it. I love reading it. Honestly, this is why I created the film club, because I just wanted to create a community where everyone can just talk at each other, or talk with each other, not at each other, but you know what I mean. But yeah, thank you all so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will see you tomorrow for the reveal that we already know what's happening. It's the Odyssey, and also let me know if you've already seen it, because I cannot wait to hear what you guys think. I'm seeing it on Tuesday, and I will sure as hell let you all know what I think. But yes, have an amazing week. Love you all, and I'll see you very soon. Bye!